Hi everyone! Firstly, thank you all so much for all the love and support on my most recent YouTube video. I was really nervous about posting it, not just because of the heavy subject matter, but also I haven't uploaded in a while and the YouTube algorithm doesn't like the sort of inconsistent uploading schedule that I have going on. So to have you all engage and comment and interact on that video has meant a lot to me. I really enjoyed reading all of your comments. Even if I'm not able to get back to some of them, I do try to read all of them. Especially the ones who were brave enough to share your stories. It was really inspiring for me to read. To the point, it gave me the courage to share my own story. So that's what we'd be doing today. Like I said in that video, I am estranged from my parents. I have been estranged from my dad for over 10 years now. And I have also been in no contact with my mom for nearly 8 months as of filming this. Today, I want to talk about what happened, what led to this. I don't care if what happened to me was normal, if it's common, if there are other people who have it worse than me, if I'm overreacting, if you don't believe me, I don't care. What happened to me was still bad enough for me to not want to see my parents ever again, and I just want to get it off my chest. For some context, I was born in Bangladesh. I arrived to Australia when I was about 10 years old. So most of the things that I'll be talking about happened in Bangladesh. Ever since I was young, I knew that there was something different about my family. Obviously, as a kid, I couldn't really explain it, but deep down, I knew that something wasn't right. In this video, I want to talk a bit more about my mom. Not saying that my dad was perfect, he was not, but I was more close with my mom than I was with my dad. And my mom is the one that I had to cut off more recently, so that wound is still fresh and more painful. I always knew that my mom did not want me. It is something that I wasn't allowed to say out loud, but I could just feel unwanted. My mom herself went through a lot of abuse and trauma, mostly under the hands of my dad and his family, and some from her own family as well. After she married my dad, she went to live with him and his family. My dad's family abused her, beat her, starved her, even after she fell pregnant with me, as a result of which I was born premature and with a whole bunch of issues. But there was also something else. So my dad was the oldest in his family. He was also the first among his siblings to marry and now have a child. My grandma from my dad's side really wanted the first grandchild of the family to be a boy. So they put a lot of pressure on my mom to give them a son, even though it's something that she didn't really have any control over. Also, the fact that they abused her, they didn't let her go out anywhere all throughout her pregnancy. She never went to a doctor, so they didn't know the gender of the baby until I was born. After I was born, though, I was obviously born a girl. And so after my mom came home with me, the abuse ramped up even more. Because I was premature as well and was not healthy either, they were disappointed in me. They were disappointed in my mom. None of them wanted to even hold me. My mom was left to do all the childcare on her own. Their house was not ready for a child at all. There was no nursery, no pram, not even diapers. My mom found some old rags in the basement that she wrapped me up with. That's all I got. Things reached a boiling point after my mom and my grandma. So my dad's mom got in a fight one day, and in the spur of the moment, my grandma picked up this giant butcher's knife that was bigger than me. So mind you, I was only a couple days old at that point. And my grandma thought it would be a good idea to attack me with that knife. But she didn't actually follow through with it though. She was stopped. But after that, My grandpa from my mom's side finally realized how dangerous it was for us to be living with them. So he managed to find us a separate apartment just for me, my mom, and my dad. Even after we moved away from my dad's family, my mom and my dad constantly fought over everything. I would fall asleep at night due to them yelling and then wake up from the sounds of them screaming at each other. They would be calling each other names, swearing at each other. Like for me, I can't even speak my native language anymore because it is so triggering for me. Like all I know are swear words from the way my parents spoke to each other. They would be throwing things around. I remember one time my mom threw a glass plate at my dad that shattered, and one of the glass pieces flew and got stuck on my dad's foot, causing him to bleed. But at some point, my mom started to blame me for everything. I now know that my mom was a narcissist and she scapegoated me for everything that went wrong in her life. All my life, I felt this tremendous amount of guilt to make things better, to help my mom feel better. At the end of every fight with my dad, my mom would scream at him saying how much she hated him, and if it wasn't for the kids that he trapped her with, aka me, she would have left him a long time ago. Then she would turn on me, find something to pick on, and go off at me. She would tell me how I ruined her life, how I ruined everything. Because of me, she can't do anything. She would do the same things that were done to her by my dad and his family to me. She would call me the same names, beat me, so she would slap me across the face, pull my hair, say that I am just like my father as a way to further guilt trip me and make me feel bad. For as long as I remember, my mom hated being a mother. She hated the fact that she had me. With my brother, she was able to tolerate him a bit more, but with me, she would have no problems unleashing all of her rage. She had anger issues, she had quite the temper. She would take it out on me as a way to regulate herself, regulate her emotions. And just like most narcissists, after she would have these rage episodes where she would call me names, beat me, pull my hair, she would just forget about it. She would act like nothing has happened. The switch up would be so instant. As a kid, I wondered if she had any mental issues, like if she suffered from amnesia or multiple personality disorder. My mom hated doing things for me, having to take care of me, cook for me especially. I grew up hearing things like, I am sick of doing things for you, I hate cooking for you. She would often slam, bang on things. Like, for example, if she's serving me food, she would slam the plate on the table in front of me. It made me feel guilty, but I didn't know what to do about it. I was still a kid. I didn't know how to cook back then. I was scared to even turn on the stove. Especially the stove that we had back in the apartment that we lived in Bangladesh. It was one of those gas stoves that you needed to light a match to turn on. One time after she had a fight with my dad, my mom decided to turn on me. She started going off about how much she hated looking after me, cooking for me, how needy I was. She turned to me and said, "Why don't you learn to do it yourself instead of relying on me all the time?" and tried to hand me a lit match. So I was around 3 or 4 years old, and she wanted to teach me how to turn on the stove by trying to hand me a lit matchstick. Of course, I couldn't do it, so I just ran away. Another time when I was about 5 or 6 years old, my mom asked me all of a sudden, "What do you do in this house?" I was a little dumbfounded, so I was like, "What do you mean?" Then my mom listed off all the things she had done that day. This is something she used to do a lot, where she would just randomly list off all the things she did for me that day to make me feel bad. After she went on and on about how she cooked for me, cleaned for me, made my bed, and did all these chores for me, she went, "And what have you done today, other than just sitting on your butt all day and getting fat?" I still didn't know what to say, so I just stared at her. She then said smugly, "You're just as useless as your father. If you want to stay in this house, you have to work." At the time, I didn't understand why it felt so wrong, but now I know. Now I know that my mom never really saw me as a human being, let alone just another child in the family. She saw me as just another set of hands that should be helping her out with chores, her rival, her competition, and extension of her partner whom she hated. So even at around 5 or 6 years old, I learned to work, I learned to do chores, because with how much my mom went on and on about how much she hated me and how she wanted to leave, I was scared that one day I will wake up and see her gone. So I did everything in my power as a freaking child to make her happy. I did chores, I behaved, I would even write her little notes and make cards telling her how much I loved her. But none of that mattered. My mom still rejected me. She would reject any physical affection I showed towards her by hitting me. When I wanted to spend time with her, she would get upset. I remember one time I walked up to her with a book that I wanted to read with her, and she literally yelled at my face saying she can't do that now because of how busy she is and how she has so much to do. Another thing that I had to put up with is the double bind that narcissists often use. Theremin Trees has a good video on it, but basically double bind is a tactic that narcissists use where they would put you in situations where there is no positive outcome for you. No matter what you do, they will shift a goalpost, manipulate, change the rules without telling you to get to you. There is no way to win. It's damned if you do, damned if you don't, basically. My mom was a master of this tactic. All my life I dealt with it where she would constantly double bind me to pick on me, find flaws, find an excuse to hit me. At this point, you could probably tell that my mom was incredibly violent and abusive, but she was also concerned about seeming like a good person. She was, in some ways, a covert narcissist. My dad was an overt narcissist where if he wanted to go off at you, he will just go up to you and start calling you names and yelling at you for no reason because he's not worried about seeming like a good person. But my mom is. So for her to get around this dilemma of wanting to abuse and scapegoat me while also looking like a good person, what she did was find an excuse, find a reason, something that is valid in her eyes to go off at me. Many survivors of narcissist abuse, especially when it comes to narcissist parents, experience this, where their parents wouldn't teach them anything, even basic skills like cooking, cleaning, driving, etc., but also get mad at them for not knowing how to do them. It's like they expect you to know how to do something without ever actually showing you how to. This is the reason why. Because if you're dependent on them, even as an adult, it gives them plenty of reasons to go off at you. Because narcissists need a supply, they need a scapegoat to regulate themselves while also seeming like a good person. Oh, look at you, you're a grown-ass adult, but you still need me to cook for you, clean for you, pick out clothes for you. Never mind that I never taught you how to do those things, and I'll throw a fit of rage if you do things any other way than how I do it. Also, if you ever struggle or make mistakes doing those things, they will use them against you. See, this is why you need me. You can't do anything on your own. Narcissists need to be needed. They need to be the most important, the go-to person in the room, the one you need to seek advice from before you do anything, even if they give you the worst advice in the world. One of the ways my mom employed this tactic was when it came to me going to the bathroom. So, my mom never actually toilet trained me. Most children are ready to be toilet trained by 2 to 3 years old, but even at that age, my mom insisted that she still wiped me or be present when I needed to go to the bathroom because she needed to be a part of everything in my life. She liked having that power over me, knowing that I can't even do something as basic as going to the bathroom without her. And so she used that to go off at me. Every time I needed to go, she would go into a fit of rage. Why do you need to go now? Why couldn't you go before? You need before everything. You can't do anything without me. I'm so sick of doing things for you. At some point, I learned to go without her, not to spite her, but because I was so scared of telling her. I remember the first time I went without her, she got so upset she did not speak to me for an entire day. But after that, she changed up the rules. I can go without her on my own, but I must ask her permission before I go. So that was the double bind. If I told her I needed to go, she would be mad, but if I went without telling her, she would also be mad. The only way to get around this is to just not go and hold it in, or go when she is not around. There was no way for me to win in this situation. To be fair, she enforced this rule with my brother as well, but she was nowhere near as strict with him as she was with me. She reserved her worst with me, yelling, beating, screaming at me, saying how I'm such a burden, such an inconvenience, how she is sick of doing things for me. She would hover over me as I'm sitting on the toilet, comment on how constipated I am or how my poop smells. If I haven't pooped in a while, she would follow me around the house complaining. If she wasn't in the toilet with me, she would be standing outside, especially if I haven't told her I needed to go, listening to what I do in there. With my brother, all he had to do was ask for permission before going to the bathroom, and my mom would gush over him. As a man, asking for a permission to use the bathroom was a huge boost to her ego. She internalized a lot of misogyny. She would compare me to him, like, see how much better your brother is than you? He asked my permission for everything. It makes me feel so much calmer and less stressed. Why can't you do the same? Sometimes with my brother, it would be a whole ritual where if he needed to go, he would stop whatever he is doing, get up and yell, I have to poop, and run towards the bathroom with my mom running after him. The whole world was expected to stop because he had to poop. I pointed out how weird it was, and I was instantly shut down by my mom, who guilt-tripped me by saying, well, at least he tells me when he has to go. You never tell me anything. I was also the oldest in my family. As you'd know if you're the oldest daughter, so much responsibility gets placed onto you as a child. I had to be the parent, the babysitter, the therapist, so much more. I had to sacrifice so much, give up on so much, and be dismissed. Like when I would complain or even cry about doing so much work, my mom would say to me, well, that's just what you have to do for your family. Sacrifices are what you're supposed to make. One time I had this one thing for me where I entered this short story writing competition and got shortlisted, and we had to travel to this place for the ceremony. Right when it was my turn to get up there and get my certificate, my mom was nowhere to be seen. Where was she? Well, she had to be with my brother because my brother had to go to the bathroom. She never bothered to toilet train him so that she could feel needed. So this one thing, this one night that was supposed to be for me, got ruined. The worst thing was when I needed to go to the bathroom at night. So the apartment that we lived in back in Bangladesh was a 2-bedroom apartment. One room was just for my dad alone, and the other had to be shared between me, my mom, and my brother, all sleeping together on one bed. We didn't question it, that's just how it was. My mom was a light sleeper and she hated being woken up in the middle of the night. There were times where she would go into a fit of rage in the middle of the night because I was moving the bed too much and that woke her up. But here's the thing though, if I had to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, I couldn't just quietly get up and go. No, I still had to ask her. So I was put in this really uncomfortable dilemma where if I needed to go, I had to ask her, but I somehow have to do it without waking her up. I can't tell you the amount of nights I would stay up awake because I would be so uncomfortable. I had to go, but I would be so scared of doing anything. No matter what I did, I would be punished, I would be yelled at, I would be told how stupid and useless I am. One time I did wake her up in the middle of the night to ask her permission to use the bathroom like she wanted me to. Then she couldn't fall back asleep. And then the next day, the entire day, she was tired and she kept rambling about how stupid I am, how useless I am, how I can't do anything on my own, even though she was the one who made up this rule. Another time, she got so mad for being woken up. In the middle of the night, right then and there, she started berating me, swearing at me. I tried to ignore her and pretended to fall asleep. Then she started kicking me. Like, I had my back turned on her, and she kicked me on my back as I was trying to fall asleep. At some point, I decided that if I needed to go, I'll go. I wouldn't bother to wake her up since she likes to sleep so much. So one night when I had to pee, I just got up and did it. Did not wake her up, did not ask for her permission. She woke up regardless. And when I got back, she asked me what happened. I was like, nothing, just go to sleep, and left it at that. The next morning, she went off at me for not telling her what I did. I finally told her, oh, I just had to pee. Then she goes, well, why couldn't you just tell me that? You know, the amount of words it takes to say I had to pee is less than nothing, just go to sleep. I'm sorry if this is like too much information for some of you, and this probably wasn't the best example to use, but this is something that I'm dealing with to this day. This is the reason why I used to wet the bed a lot as a kid, because either way I would get in trouble. If I wake her up and ask for her permission to use the bathroom, I would get yelled at for waking her up. If I don't and just quietly get up and go without telling her, I would still be yelled at for not telling her. So there was no winning. You are damned if you do, damned if you don't. This is the perfect example of the double bind. To this day, I get so anxious if I have to go to the bathroom, even if I don't live with her anymore. Like, my first instinct is to hold it in. It's like a reflex at this point. With how much my mom complained about having to take care of me, you may think she must be relieved when I go away, right? When I am at a friend's house or somewhere else where she doesn't have to look after me. No, you're dead wrong. My mom is the type of person who never went out anywhere. I don't know if she had agoraphobia or some kind of debilitating anxiety from going outside. I don't know. But growing up, the only place she allowed me to go is out on the yard. Even then, she would watch me over like a hawk and monitor my every move. So the apartment that we lived in back in Bangladesh was on the 5th floor, so pretty high up with a balcony. Every time my mom let me go out, she would sit in the balcony and watch me. She would watch over me and judge my every move, who I spoke with, who I hanged out with. If I ran, she hated me running because she didn't want me to fall over. If I did something she didn't like, she would give me hell for it once I got home. Like, why did you speak to this person? What did you guys talk about? I told you not to run. I am your mother. I know what is best for you. I felt like a prisoner at my own home, like I'm some kind of criminal that constantly needs to be watched over. When I went out, I was only allowed to stay at the front of the yard where she could see me. I remember one time I went out in the back to do something, and then the moment I got home, my mom demanded to know what I did back there, why I went back there, why I got out of her side. And she didn't even let me enter until I told her. Like, she blocked the doorway with the chair that she was sitting on and would not let me in until I told her where I went. Another time, as I was coming back from school, my mom watched me as I was walking home. When I got home, I haven't even entered the house and she demanded to know where I went. I was confused. I didn't understand what she meant. She went on to say how, as she was watching me walk home, apparently I turned around and went somewhere else, and so she wanted to know where I went. To this day, I have no idea what she is talking about. I don't know what she saw, but I came straight home. I did not go anywhere. But she did not believe me. She kept pressuring me to tell her where I went. At some point, I started crying, like, Mom, I don't know what you're talking about. I swear I didn't go anywhere. I don't know. I came straight home. And then she just slapped me right across the face. My mom also did not let me have any friends. She always had something to say about the people I hanged out with. She herself did not have any friends, so she did not want me to have any either. It's like she wanted to be the only person in my life, my mom, my friend, my helper, everything. So if I ever interacted with anyone else, she almost got jealous. I remember one time I stayed back after school to hang out with some of my friends. We went out and got some ice cream. I came home later than usual because of this. My mom opened the door and the first thing she asked me was, "Where were you?" I made up some excuses on how I was held back in class. Then my mom asked me to open my mouth and I froze. You see, the ice cream cart in my neighborhood sold only fruit popsicles. These were the kind of popsicle that would stain your tongue or sometimes your entire mouth. They had two flavors, orange and lime. The orange one would stain your tongue orange, and the lime one, which was bright green, would stain your tongue green. My mom hated me having those ice cream or any food outside of what she made for me, even though she would constantly complain about having to cook for me because it was just another thing of control for her. She claimed it was because those popsicles were unhealthy and she didn't want me having those. But in reality, she hated me having any freedom, any autonomy, any agency, especially with other people. So I stood there frozen, did not open my mouth, knowing exactly what to come. My mom then yelled at my face, "Open your mouth." When I still did not comply, my mom started beating me right then and there, slapping me, hitting me, saying how I must not love or appreciate her after all she had done for me. When I still didn't open my mouth, she pinched my nose shut till I couldn't breathe, so I gasped for air, opening up my mouth wide. And there it was, my tongue stained bright orange. My mom then dragged me onto the balcony and shut the door. I was locked in the balcony for God knows how long. At one point, I had to go to the bathroom, so I just took off my pants and peed right there on the balcony floor. After a couple hours, when my mom finally opened the door and found me, she saw me sitting there having peed on myself. My mom then started laughing at me as if she completely forgot what she had done to me just a couple hours ago. "Oh, if you needed to pee, why couldn't you just tell me?" But how could I? I was locked up. Did she expect me to scream through the door? This is something she would continue to bring up to make fun of me, laugh at me. This is the funny story she would tell guests when we would have them over about her stupid daughter who peed on the balcony floor. She would, of course, conveniently leave out what happened before that and the fact that she had locked me in there. After this incident, I stopped hanging out with my friends. I was too scared to. I would just come straight home after school like my mom wanted me to. It breaks my heart sometimes when I think of all the things I missed out on. Bangladesh is such a beautiful country with so much history, culture, nature, but I never got to see any of it. It was so unfair because my mom did get to travel. I saw pictures of her before she got married and had me. She was able to travel, she was able to see the world. I couldn't. To this day, I can't connect with people. Not being socialized as a child leaves you with lifelong consequences, as it turns out. I can't make or maintain relationships. I am incredibly awkward, nervous, I say the wrong things. I am also developmentally stunted. I can't run, I can't climb. I am incredibly uncoordinated. I can't do anything that people my age can. These are the things that I have to live with to this day. But we'll talk more on that later. I really could go on with these kinds of stories. But for now, I want to focus a bit on the thing that really gave me the brunt of all this abuse and mistreatment, which was school. So I was sexually abused by my dad when I was younger. I don't remember exactly what happened, but I know it happened. It was happening for a good couple of years, but only around when I was 6 or 7 years old, I caught on to what was going on. The realization of it, plus all the abuse I endured under the hands of my mom, left me with irreversible damage, let's just say that. One of the things that suffered were my grades. I was in grade 3 at the time. For some context, the school system in Bangladesh has 10 years. So in most Western countries, you have K to 12, so 12 years of school. Some countries have 13. In Bangladesh, there was 10, and halfway through in grade 5, you sit a giant national exam that is done by everyone who is in grade 5 in the country. So like how you have end of school exams in year 12 or year 13, in Bangladesh, you sit 2 of those. So grades 1 to 5 is called primary school. At the end of year 5, you sit a giant exam in all of your subjects. Grades 5 to 10 is called secondary school. And by the end of year 10, you sit another bigger exam and then you get out of school. So by the time you get to grade 3, grade 4, things get significantly harder because they're trying to prepare you for this big exam that is coming up in grade 5. I don't know what it's called in English, but in Bengali it's called Shamapuni. If you're Bengali, you'd probably know what I'm talking about. So grades 1 and 2 are whatever. You had 5 subjects: English, Bengali, maths, humanities, and religion studies. You still had to sit tests and exams, but it was nothing serious. Starting from grade 3, however, the amount of subjects you do nearly doubles. So now you had 2 branches of English and Bengali. In English, you had what we called English Paper 1 and English Paper 2. English Paper 1 was more about reading, writing, literature, that sorts of things. This is where you would write essays, memorize poems. English Paper 2 was more about grammar and spelling and the technical side of language. Same goes for Bengali. Now we also had science as an additional subject. So within 1 year, you jump from doing 5 subjects to 8 subjects. That, combined with everything else that was going on in my personal life, made things really difficult for me. My family completely disregarded what was happening to me. Obviously, my mom dismissed me because she was abusing me. To her, it did not seem like a big deal. And for the sexual abuse that I experienced under the hands of my dad, that also got brushed under the carpet. My mom only took things seriously after my grades suffered. So my mom had dreams of going well in school and getting into a good college and all of that, but she never got to do that because her family, her dad especially, my grandfather, pressured her into getting married and having kids and being a housewife at a young age. As a result, she held on to a lot of resentment and wanted to vicariously live her dreams through me. She saw me as an extension of herself, like most narcissist parents do to their children. And so when my grades suffered, she took it personally. She took it as an insult to herself. The way it worked was that in 3rd grade, after you've had your exams and they have marked all of it, they do like a parent-teacher conference where the teachers sit down with your parents and they go over where you went wrong and all that. After my mom went to one of these, she got home and she was so upset. She told me that I only got 57 out of 100 in one of the exams, and she was saying how shocked and upset she was. She told me how she kept checking at the top right of the paper where you write your name to see if they had accidentally given her the wrong paper, because she could not believe that her daughter, someone related to her, could do so bad in a test. I remember she kept saying, my daughter got 57 out of 100 in a test. After that, you may think maybe she got me tutoring or sat me down to talk about why I was struggling. Not that I would feel safe to open up to her, but no. She decided that it was the school that was the problem, so I needed to go to a different school. So the school that I ended up going to, this was the kind of school that to say it was strict would be an understatement. This was one of the most popular sought-after schools in Bangladesh. There were a lot of rules that you had to follow. It was the kind of school where you have to stand up to greet the teacher and don't sit down until being told so, where you can be punished for not having clean pressed uniform. Your hair needs to be done a certain way. It had to be styled with coconut oil. For short hair, you had to wear bobby pins. For mid-length hair, you'd have to wear 2 ponytails with ribbons. And for longer hair, you'd have to braid it with ribbons. You'd have to keep your nails trimmed and clean. And of course, the standards in the school were much, much higher. But there was something else as well that was much more sinister. So Bangladesh is an incredibly populated country. It is one of the most densely populated countries in the world. And on top of that, this being such a popular sort of the school, there was a lot of competition. It was an all-girls school, and the girls that I went to school with all came from extremely privileged, wealthy backgrounds. People became friends with you depending on how well you did in school. I remember when I was struggling at one point and my grades weren't the best, I had some of my so-called friends stop talking to me from there. The classes ran from 9 till 12, I believe, and at its most, we had 95 students in our classes. So at some point, we had to start having our classes in this massive lecture hall. As you can imagine, 95 students in one giant hall, classes for 8 subjects that ran for only 3 hours a day. You can't do much learning in class. So there would be so much homework. There was also no means to socialize or make friends. We only got like a 15-minute break in between. So to get around that, what many teachers from that school did was they would run private sessions, they would run private study sessions outside of school that they called coaching. Now, these coaching sessions were not perfect. There were plenty of shady things that would happen in these sessions, where the people taking them would bribe the teachers with money for better grades, cheat sheets, or some insider information on what would be in the exams. But regardless of that, these sessions were quite literally the only places where you can catch up on what you've learned. It was also a great place to socialize and make friends. Like I said, you only got a 15-minute break in school. I would spend most of that time just eating my lunch. But my mom decided that she knew better. She refused to let me go to these coaching sessions and decided that she is good enough to teach me herself. Now, my mom was not a teacher, okay? Frankly, she was not very good at teaching or explaining things. Her version of teaching is just showing off or bragging about how much better she is at something than me. But also, remember when I said how my mom needs an excuse to go off at me? Well, school, studying, grades became the perfect vessel for that. Because there are so many things you could pick on. Whether it be my spelling, any grammatical errors, my handwriting. She gave me hell over handwriting. At some point, she said to me that I had the worst handwriting in the entire school. I don't know how she came up with that. She did not speak to anyone else at my school, let alone knew how their handwriting looked. The work wasn't necessarily hard, but it was just a lot. A lot of memorization, a lot of content, a lot of information that you needed to retain. And to be fair, my mom did put a lot of effort in. She would stay up all night writing up notes for me that she wanted me to study. That's on top of doing all the chores during the day. But that also meant that when I struggled, when I made mistakes, when I failed at something, she took it personally. Because she is putting in so much effort for me to do well by doing things her way. If I struggled, she took it as an insult. Say if she is explaining something to me but I did not get it right away, she didn't go, oh, maybe I'm just not explaining it right, or maybe I'm just not good at explaining things, so let's just try another way. No, she would just hit me. She would slap me across the face. Sometimes she would hit on my other body parts, but slap across the face was the most common. because she did not have the humility to accept that maybe she is wrong. Instead, she would make it my problem and say how stupid, dumb, ugly I am. Every time she was in a bad mood and wanted to get it out on me, she would just pick up a book and would start quizzing me. She would question me and keep questioning until I get something wrong, and then she would use that mistake as an excuse to lash out on me. And she would also latch onto that mistake for the next couple of days to come and would keep bringing it up to go off at me. She would not let it go. It will become her fuel to keep using against me until I made some other bigger mistake. Another issue with the sort of homeschooling program she had going on was that there was no break. I was expected to study, to go over notes, even on weekends and holidays. I was expected to be on call 24/7 for her to question something random. Could be anything from a maths question to reciting an entire poem from memory or something general knowledge related. And I was expected to have it right then and there, always being prepared. Her excuse for it was, I always did everything for you. I never got a break from chores and raising you. Why should you get a break? When I finally got into that school that my mom wanted me to go to, I was enrolled halfway through. So I got in during the middle of the year. And literally on my first day, they had a test that they were doing that I did not know about. And so as my mom was dropping me off, we met up with my teacher. My mom and my teacher chit-chatted a little bit. My mom mentioned how I needed to be kept an eye on because I'm a little bit of a troublemaker who is not so good at school. Then my teacher said to her, oh, we're actually doing a test today. It's nothing serious, just to see where everyone's at with what we're learning. Would you like nobody to sit out of it? I mean, it's her first day after all. She did not have the chance to prepare and study like everyone else. My mom still insisted that I do the test, because up until this point, she was teaching me. So she saw this test as the perfect opportunity to show off how much of a great teacher she is, how she can just do it all on her own. You know, she wanted to brag in front of all the other parents that I was able to do this test on my own without even knowing about it, without studying for it, without preparing for it, on my first day, all because of her magnificent teaching. Except she couldn't really do that. Unsurprisingly, I bombed that test. It was out of 50, I scored 10 out of 50. For the record, no one was surprised. My teacher actually comforted me as she was handing back the test that got marked on the same day, saying, it's okay, it's only your first day, take it as a learning opportunity. But inside, I was freaking out because I knew when I got home, my mom would kill me. But what ended up happening was so much worse than what I had anticipated. The entire way home, she did not speak to me, was giving me silent treatment. I was just following her. The moment we got home, she slammed the door shut and slapped me across the face so hard I nearly fell. The abuse and beating carried on sporadically the entire day. When she wasn't beating me, she was yelling, screaming, holding up the marked test paper in front of me, pointing out every single thing I got wrong. She slammed on things, banged on things, threw my stuff around. The worst came during bath time, so I was only around 7 or 8 years old at the time. I couldn't bathe on my own. My mom had to bathe me. And she hit me as she was bathing me, so I was naked completely as I was in the bath, and she kept bringing up every single thing I got wrong in that test, and for every mistake she hit me. So getting hit was relatively common, happened pretty often. For me, it wasn't really the fact that it hurt. Getting slapped didn't hurt that much, honestly, but maybe it's just me. I was probably used to it at that point. It was more so the shame and the humiliation that came with it, and the fact that whatever I was getting hit for would be used against me for days or even weeks to come. My mom would not let it go. She would keep bringing it up over and over to use against me, to lash out on me. And so when I knew I messed up, when I knew I would be in trouble, it would make me physically ill. I remember one time I scored really badly on a maths test. It was out of 20. I got a 7 out of 20. I didn't even want to go home that day. I kept pacing around the schoolyard, going back and forth. I was even thinking of jumping in front of a truck because I would rather die than have to deal with what is to come. But eventually I got home. My mom opened the door, and before I even entered, she asked me how I went. I told her. She then grabbed my arm, dragged me to the balcony. So we lived on the 5th floor, pretty high up on the building, where through the balcony everyone could see what is going on. And right there in front of everyone, she gave me the hardest slap on the face that I had so far. So if that's how it was during regular test, you may be asking, how did she behave during exam times? You know, the times when you did need to study hard and log in. Well, during exams, she would make sure I was glued to the table 24/7 and going over everything. The only times I was allowed to get up was during meals and to use the bathroom. Those were the only breaks I got. She would take away everything I liked doing, so reading, drawing, playing with toys. She would hide them, sometimes even destroy them. I remember I had this fluffy duck toy that I liked that she smashed it with a hammer as a way to punish me. She would constantly belittle my hobbies, especially drawing. I liked to draw as a kid. She would say how my drawings were bad, how this will not amount to anything, how I should just give up and go study instead. To this day, I can't draw. If I ever have to draw anything, I just freeze because of all the flashbacks I get. The way exams worked was that you get a separate question and answer sheet. So you would get a small piece of paper that would have all the questions and a couple sheets of A4 paper to write answers on. On the top right of the A4 sheets of paper, you would write your name and other identifying information, and you would write the number of the question. So say question 1 and then your answer. At the end of the exam, you would hand in the answer sheets, so the A4 sheets of paper, but that little piece of paper with all the questions, you get to take that home. The expectation was that you would talk amongst your peers as to how you went, what you got wrong and all that, but not in my case. After exams, I was expected to come straight home, and my mom would hold up that piece of paper in front of me and start interrogating me. What did you write for this? What did you write for that? Tell me exactly what you did. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm the kind of person that just forgets everything the second I step out the exam. I mean, the exam is over. I don't need to know any of this anymore. But my mom would demand to know exactly what I've written, word for word. And if she didn't like what I wrote, she would hit me. I remember one time I did not understand one of the questions and ended up writing only half of it. So basically what it was that you had to list some bullet points about something and write a small paragraph about each of them explaining it. I missed the part of the question where it said that I had to explain it, so I only just listed the bullet points. And she literally started beating me, hitting me, slapping me across the face till I was on the ground, and once I was on the ground, she started kicking me. But despite that, hitting really wasn't that bad. I know physical abuse is seen as the epitome of abuse, like 9 times out of 10, if you say that you've been abused, the first thing you're asked is, oh, did they hit you? When hitting is far from being the worst thing that can happen to you. For me at least, and plenty of survivors that I've spoken to, it's more so the humiliation, the shame, the fear, and other psychological damage that stays with you. When I think back on some of the worst things my mom did to me, hitting doesn't even make it on that list. Because with my mom, after she hit me, it was done over. I know lashing out on me was how she regulated herself, and so once she had done that, I know it's out of her system, she is good for now. But with other types of abuse, the verbal abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, it would take her much longer to regulate herself, and so it was diabolical to endure. For example, oftentimes she would try to scare me, try to intimidate me, threaten me, made me think that she was going to do something but would not actually do it, Her reaction over what I now know are literally the smallest, most trivial, mundane things would be so over the top. One time there was this miscommunication with a girl in my class. So I let her borrow my book to take down some notes during the break and told her to give it back to me by next class when we get back. Well, she misheard me and thought I said, oh, give it back to me by next day. And to make things worse, after we got back from our break, we went straight into our next class and I completely forgot about it. Until I got home and my mom checked my bag every day after I get home from school. She goes through my stuff, she flicks through my books to see what I've written. She justifies it by going, well, I bought this for you with my money, so I have the right to see what you do. And she noticed that one of my books were missing. She asked me about it and then I was like, oh shit, I let this girl in my class have it and completely forgot to get it back. And she pulled a giant butcher's knife on me. Like, she let out a guttural scream and held up this butcher's knife, making it seem like she was going to do something with it to me, but she did not. For the record, this wasn't the first time she had done something like this. Everything she did for me was conditional, came with strings attached, which made me feel really guilty, but there was nothing I could do about it. Even gifts, like, I don't know about you, but when I give someone something, I see it as, oh, that thing is theirs now. It's not my business what they do with it. I may not like it, but after I've gifted them this, it is theirs now. But not with my mom. With my mom, even with gifts, that would come with strings attached. If I'm not using it right or not in the way that she wants me to, she would give me hell for it. On my 11th birthday, she gave me $10 to spend. I was really happy. $10 was a lot for me back then. And so I spent it almost right away. I went to the school canteen and spent it. I bought myself something, bought my friends something, and had a great time. But then a couple weeks later, she asked me, what happened to that $10 I gave you? I'm like, what do you mean? And turns out she was short on money, and so she wanted to pay for my own excursion that was coming up with that $10. She started looking for it. She went through my stuff, looked all over the house for that $10, until I sheepishly told her that I had already spent it. She then spent the next hour or so screaming, yelling, slamming and banging on things, going on about all the things she did for me, how she struggles for me, like how she had to carry groceries home because she can't afford to catch the bus, guilt-tripping me, saying how I must not love or appreciate her because how dare I go out and have fun with my friends while she has to suffer for me. At the end of this rant, she threw a knife at me that I thankfully dodged. All over $10. She always made sure that I knew that what she was doing for me, so things like cooking, cleaning, looking after me, were done out of the graciousness of her own heart that I should be grateful for. It's not something that she has to do. Even with something like food, she would often weaponize it, use it to control me, and hold it over my head to make me do what she wanted. She would play these games where she would pretend to take something away, something I liked, something I needed, because she liked seeing me in despair, begging and crying at her. After I've humiliated and embarrassed myself, she would give it back to me. She did it the most often with food. So my mom never actually starved me. I want to make it clear that she never let me go without food. But she made sure that I knew that she could, that she had that power over me. If it wasn't for her, I could go hungry. One time she made me do some work for school. She wrote up a bunch of questions that I had to write down the answers for. And I was struggling with one of them. I did not know how to do it. But my mom was like, until you figured it out, you have to sit there. You're not allowed to get up. So I sat there thinking, but I still couldn't do it. At some point, I began crying because it had been hours and I was hungry and it was almost lunchtime. My mom still didn't let me get up. She said to me, until you have finished that, you're not eating lunch today. Lunchtime rolls around and my mom set up the table only for herself, my dad, and my brother. My study table was just a couple feet away from the dining table, so I could see them from a distance as they were eating without me. My mom made it seem like she did not prepare food for me, as my spot on that table was empty, my plate wasn't set up. I began screaming and crying and begging, not just because I was hungry, but because I didn't like how my own family was leaving me out. I cried and begged, like, please, Mom, please, I promise I'll work harder and next time I'll know how to do this. Please let me sit with you. Please let me eat. I swear I saw a slight smirk on my mom's face. My mom liked that I was begging and pleading her over something as basic as food. She liked having that power over me. She liked ignoring me as I begged her for her attention. She liked rejecting me. They all finished eating and my mom cleaned up. Right then and there, I accepted my defeat. I thought it's fine. I can go without a meal, without eating, as I stared at the book in front of me, pages wet from my tears. But then, out of nowhere, my mom showed up with a plate of food. She placed it on the table and walked away without saying a word. Turns out she had a plate of food prepared for me this entire time and she had hidden it from me. But she pretended not to because she wanted to scare me. Then she just appeared out of nowhere with this plate of food like, haha, that was just a prank. She wanted to keep me in this state of fear where I must know that if I crossed her, she could let me starve, let me go hungry. Crossing her meant being bad in school, getting poor grades, and not being able to do something. So everything was conditional and dependent on me getting good grades. I would have little breakdowns over grades. I would even be suicidal at 9 or 10 years old over grades. And this had nothing to do with my future, my career, none of that. It was to make my mom seem good, for her to brag about. I got absolutely no breaks. Even during holidays and weekends, I was expected to study. I did not study because I liked it so much and I was enjoying what I was learning. No, for the most part, I did it to not get hit or punished, for her to not be disappointed in me for once. And her punishments literally did not make any sense. Like one time I couldn't finish an exam, like I was on the last question, then time ran out and they took the paper, and I freaked out right then and there in the exam hall because I knew that my mom would lose it. I literally cried as I walked home and my mom opened the door and she asked me how I went. I told her I couldn't finish it, and then she gave me silent treatment the entire day, did not speak a word to me. If I was on the last question on an exam and then time ran out and they took the paper, that doesn't necessarily mean that I did poorly on the exam. There were still plenty of other questions early on that could potentially still give me a good score, but it did not matter to my mom because she wanted to be upset. She was looking for a reason to be mad at me. When brought up now, she would deny all of this or say that it was something that she just had to do and how else am I supposed to learn and how everybody does it. But that's all bullshit. I know it's bullshit because none of my friends, the girls I went to school with, they never had to put up with this. They went to coaching, they had study groups, and their grades went much better too. Meanwhile, I was stuck with her and there was nothing I could do about it. But despite that, when I sat that exam in grade 5 at 10 years old, I passed. I passed Shomapuni, I passed with flying colors. I scored a GPA 5, which is 80% or over at all subjects. My mom was so proud. She was going around telling everyone in the neighborhood. But I was drained. I was exhausted. I couldn't even feel anything anymore. But none of that mattered anyway, because literally a couple months later, we had to leave Bangladesh and move to Australia because my dad got a job here. So this exam that I wasted my blood, sweat, tears for, sacrificed my childhood for, didn't even matter in the end. After we made it to Australia, my mom stopped hitting me because, well, she realized that she could get in trouble here for doing that. The marriage between her and my dad also ended 2 years later. That was a whole other thing as well. That is just too much to get into right now. And She also conveniently forgot that any of these things ever happened. Now I think is a good time to explain what would happen when I would bring up the things that she did to me. This was back when I thought I could just sit her down and just calmly and eloquently explain to her and just talk about our feelings and everything would be okay. I mean, that was the advice I was getting from everyone around me. Now I know better. Now I know that my mom is a narcissist and she would avoid accountability at all costs. So bringing up the things she had done to me was absolutely futile. Firstly, she would deny it. She would act like she doesn't remember, like nothing happened. If that doesn't work, she would make it about herself. Oh, if you think that was bad, what do you think I have been through? She would do this thing where she would go, tell me one thing I did wrong. But then as you start going off, she would not listen, she would double down, she would make excuses. Tell me one thing I did wrong was a manipulation tactic because in her mind she could do no wrong. Once she would start to run out of excuses, she would try to guilt trip me by saying, I guess it's all my fault. I'm just the worst mom ever. She would bring up my dad saying, you are just like your father, as if that was an insult. One time she burst into tears when I brought up how I felt that I was being treated unfairly compared to my brother, to the point I felt bad and I ended up apologizing to her. I soon picked up that she would behave like this only when we were inside the house within the privacy of the home. So I thought maybe out in public, if I tried to speak to her, that would be more effective. So one time we planned to go out somewhere and I thought on the way there I would open up about how I needed some space from her. Long story short, she lost it out in public, took her stuff and walked off the opposite direction to what we had planned. And every time she would do this, she would give me hell for it. She would remember every single details and bring up every time we fought to embarrass me. It's this double standard where if she did something, she would forget immediately after. But if I pushed back, she would take it with her to the grave. But even if she had forgotten, I haven't. I had at the time disassociated a lot of these, but I still experienced the symptoms of trauma. I was getting what I now know to be flashbacks, panic attacks, triggers on a regular basis. School was a major trigger. Even if my mom was no longer hitting me, I still carried a lot of that fear and anxiety in my body. I had this irrational fear that someone was constantly watching over me, monitoring my every move, looking for a reason to attack me. Even if my mom wasn't with me, I would freak out every time I made a mistake doing something because I thought somebody was going to hit me. Sometimes the fear would literally cause my brain to shut off. Say if a teacher was sitting close to me and was explaining something, my body would go into a fight or flight mode. I would dissociate and would not understand a word of what they were saying. This was so hard because I would have to go to school. I couldn't just avoid school like I would any other trigger. Especially when I would try to tell people that I couldn't go to school, they wouldn't understand. They would think that I was just being lazy and making excuses to get out of work. The way I would cope with that is through doing subjects that don't require much memorization. Memorizing was extremely triggering for me, so I would do a lot of subjects like maths, sciences, physics. Everybody applauded me like, oh wow, you're so smart doing all these hard subjects. When that was far from reality, I only did them because those were the only things that did not trigger me. Even when the fear of beatings was not looming over me, I still worked hard. I worked really hard in school because I thought I needed to in order to get out and move away from my mom. I didn't really think about what to study after school or what career to pursue, as long as I had the means to support myself. But here in Australia, that became difficult to do so. Even after the beatings had stopped, my mom was still incredibly controlling and abusive. She tried to control where I went, what I did, who I spoke to. In high school, she made up a rule that after I've reached school, I must call or text her telling her that I've reached. She never explained why, aside from a vague, oh, you never know what could happen on the way. She would ring me in class. Once when I forgot to text her, she showed up to school demanding to see me. When I was around 17 or 18 years old, I really wanted to go to this beach. She was against me going, but I went anyway because I spent weeks planning it and wasn't going to let it go to waste. Got there, texted my mom, even sent her a picture, thought it was all good. But then, not even an hour later, she started blowing up my phone. Apparently, she saw on the news that there had been an accident with the public transport, so I had to come home immediately. I don't know what the logic behind that was, but she literally sounded like she was going to pass out on the other end of the phone. So this trip that I had planned for weeks was looking so forward to going, I had to cut it short because of her. And the kicker of it all was the public transport was fine. There was no delays. I got home with no issues. As we got older, we started being more independent and distanced ourselves from her. For me especially, I was still triggered by everything she had done to me in the past. I would get nightmares, I would tense up when she was around, I would flinch when she would try to touch me. And she would laugh it off like, "Oh, why are you so scared of me? Why don't you ever tell me anything? What have I ever done to you?" She hated how we wanted space from her, especially after my dad left. I took his room. So I had my own separate room for the first time when I was 13. And my mom hated it when I would lock the door. She would burst in sporadically. She did this thing where she taped the door handles, so you know how for doors to lock, the latch had to get inside the hole. Well, she stuffed that hole with paper and other stuff and taped over it. That way the doors would never lock. Like, you could still shut it obviously, but it's not going to lock. She hated it when we wore headphones because she couldn't listen on what we were doing. All this behavior did not make any sense with how she was treating us, how she would act when we actually needed something from her. When we actually needed her, she would act so high and mighty, like, "Oh, you need me for everything. You can't do anything on your own." If I told her to do something for me, she would do it incorrectly, half-ass it, do it her way and not the way that I asked for. And if I complained, she would guilt trip me like, "Oh, you never appreciate anything I do for you." And these were basic things, like I wasn't asking her for designer clothes or other frivolous things, like textbooks for school. She did not understand why I needed them. She complained about how expensive they were. For the longest time, she refused to buy me a laptop for school. I had to leave early every morning to go to my school library and borrow one. And those laptops were absolute rubbish. The screens would be cracked, they would die in like 2 hours. Her excuse was, "Well, I always had to make do with having less, why can't you do the same?" Back then she was in nursing school because now we no longer lived with my dad. She actually had to go out and get a job. And nursing was obviously really hard, but then after she would get home, she would just lash out on us. She would go off about how she is sick of looking after us, how she is sick of paying for rent and bills, how she just can't wait till we leave her alone. Literally 2 weeks after I turned 15, I got my first job. That is the minimum wage you have to be to work where I live. Now I hope that my mom would be relieved because I was getting my own money, getting whatever I needed. No, she still complained. She now complained about how she hated my job, how it will not amount to anything, how I should just quit. So again, there was this double bind. She hates it when she has to do things for us, but she also hates it when we leave her alone, mind our own business and get our own things. Now that she could no longer hit us, she had to find another outlet for her anger, something acceptable to lash out on. So she turned to hurting animals and insects. So our apartment back then had a cockroach problem because my mom did not clean. She thought she was above cleaning, especially cleaning the bathroom. I remember some parts of the house weren't clean since the entire time that we lived there. Especially our toilet wasn't cleaned properly for almost a decade. The toilet water was murky and yellowish. There were dust layers this thick on everything. Bits of hair everywhere. The ground behind the toilet was entirely black from all the dust. It would not get cleaned until I started cleaning the communal areas of the apartment every week, only about a year ago back when I lived there. Now that I've moved out for 8 months, I don't even want to imagine what it looks like. But regardless, this caused an infestation of cockroaches all over the apartment. Little tiny cockroaches would be everywhere, on our bed, in the bathroom, in the kitchen. And my mom just brushed it off. Like, I remember once finding cockroaches in the fridge where we kept our food, and I was frantic about it. Like, Mom, there are cockroaches inside the fridge, crawling all over the food. And she just dismissed me, like, oh, just pick it off. I eventually looked up and found out that our real estate agent offers excavation services, which was so easy to do. Like, say if you owned your own house, your own property, excavating insects is something you have to do yourself, so you are the one that needs to find pest control. If you lived in an apartment complex like we did, all you needed to do was send in a request to your real estate agent and they will take care of it. She couldn't even do that. She claimed she was too lazy to do it, but I knew there was something else, something sinister. So at this point, my mom had graduated and was now working as a nurse. It was still a really hard and demanding job for her. She worked late. By the time she got home, we would already be asleep. So after she would get back from work, she would start this ritual of killing cockroaches. She bought her own traps, sprays, things to crush the cockroaches with. Because she did it during the night, she thought we wouldn't know about it, but I did. I sometimes woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of her slamming things. I remember she once described it to me how she would come home from work and turn the lights on and see all these cockroaches caught like deer in the headlights and running away from her to escape. But they couldn't because she set up traps all over the place for them to get stuck on. Once they were stuck, she would walk up to them and smash them with this handle that she had that she would hit me with when I was younger. She was salivating at this point as she described how seeing the guts of the cockroaches getting smashed all over brought her this inexplicable level of joy. Aside from the obvious cruelty, this was also an extremely inefficient way of killing cockroaches because she only managed to kill a small amount of cockroaches at a time. The rest would just run away from her and hide. Yet she refused to get an excavator because she liked killing cockroaches that way. I kept pressuring her, begging her, then she finally requested for one. The excavator came in and did their job. We had to leave the apartment for 2 hours for the chemicals to set in. After that, all the cockroaches were magically gone. We haven't seen a cockroach in there since. While we all were relieved, my mom still complained. She lamented on how much she liked killing cockroaches, and now she had nothing to lash out on after she got home from work. My mom herself has been through a lot. You don't behave the way she did without having gone through something in the past. I don't know her entire story, but she lost her own mother, so my biological grandmother, when she was 8 years old. After that, my grandfather remarried, and the relationship between her and her stepmom has always been contentious. And then she was also in an abusive relationship with my dad for years, but the problem was not that she has been through these things, because it was and never will be her fault. It was that she never sought out any help for it. She never spoke to a therapist, she didn't have any friends, she barely ever went out. Instead, she would much rather take it out on me as a way to cope and regulate herself. She was vehemently against therapy because she refused to admit that anything was wrong with her. In her mind, her husband, my dad, was the bad one who brought out the worst in her, which doesn't explain why she behaves so erratically still even after he's gone. And it wasn't just for herself, for me as well. She did not let me go to therapy. She would say to me, "Oh, why can't you just talk to me if you're going through something?" I did seek out therapy anyway without her knowledge. And when she found out, she lost it and did not speak to me for 3 days. Another issue that she'll have is that she'll get these migraines that will keep her bedbound for days. She would be triggered by any senses, so light, sound, smell. Instead of going to a bedroom and locking the door, she will insist on sleeping in the living room where she set up a bed. So we would have to walk on eggshells, have to make do with working in the dark, especially in the winter months. She would have a bucket by her bedside that she would puke into that I would have to clean up. I would also have to cook, clean, do everything around the house. I even had to take days off school to look after her. These migraines had nothing to do with her physical health. She had been to so many doctors, they never found anything. It was a mental health issue, which again, there was nothing wrong with, but she refused to get any help for it. Instead, she would get me to look after her, drop everything I'm doing to be by her side, because, well, she had to sacrifice so much for me, why can't I do this little thing for her? Part of me wonders if she deliberately suffered just to use it against me, to guilt trip me, to make me feel bad. Looking back now, her migraine episodes would always happen the night before I had something big, whether it be an excursion, a presentation, an exam. Conveniently, the night before, she would be throwing up from a migraine and beg me to stay back and look after her. It's like she was sabotaging me. For her to be like, see, I have been through so much for you. I am literally ill now because of all I did for you. Why can't you do this one little thing for me? Meanwhile, if I ever needed anything from her, she would give me hell for it. Throughout high school, she never came to any of my performances, no meetings, not even parent-teacher interviews. She would throw such a tantrum. One time I begged her to go to this parent-teacher interview. Yes, I had to ask her to go. She kept making excuses after excuses. When I would manage to drag her out the house, she would complain the entire time. Things that most parents are expected to do, I had to fight tooth and nail for her to do them. But then when I decide, fine, I'll do it myself, I don't need you anymore, that's when she'll come crawling back. Now I think it's a good time to talk about the enablers around me who allowed this behavior to happen. Because it's one thing for my mom to act and behave this way, but to also have all the people around her not say or do anything and just allow it to happen made things 100 times worse. Like I said, when called out on her behavior, my mom would act like she does not remember, like she had forgotten everything, as if she had selective amnesia. But it wasn't just her who had amnesia about what she did, everyone around her did as well. When I would try to tell people, they too would make excuses, they too would gaslight me, they too would act like nothing happened. I remember one time when I was younger and I was at my grandma's house, I broke down as I vented to my grandma about what my mom did. At some point I said I don't understand what I did, why my mom hates me so much. And my grandma was more offended at me even saying that I thought my mom hated me than my mom actually abusing me. She dismissed me off immediately, like, oh, your mom doesn't hate you. Don't you ever say that. She has just been through a lot, so just go be nice to her. Looking back now, I think most of our family knew what was going on, which is why they all distanced themselves from us. Like one of my uncles, my mom's brother, was the only family we had in Australia, and he too decided to burn the bridge with us. Him and his family moved houses, moved to another state, and didn't even bother to tell us. My brother too was another huge enabler. He was the golden child of the family, my mom's favorite. In his mind, his mother could do no wrong. When my mom would go off at me, it would happen right in front of him and he would not do anything. Afterwards, he would make excuses like, oh, only if you did this, this and that, she wouldn't have gone off at you. When he was younger, he also joined in with the abuse. He too would also hit me. But as he got older, he just distanced himself because he did not want to get involved. When he called out on it, they would all act oblivious and pretend that they did not know what was going on. But that's all bullshit. They all knew, but they would much rather have me be the sacrificial lamb so that my mom would not come after them. Another problem with having endured narcissistic abuse at such an early age is that even as you get older and distance yourself from your abusers, unless you do the work, get your self-esteem up, go to therapy and all of that, you become a magnet for other narcissists. You continue to attract abusers, narcissists, people who act like you're abusers. This is unfortunately so common. So many survivors experience this. I remember when I was going to a support group for survivors, one of the facilitators said, it's like you have this invisible sign on top of your head that says, pick on me, bully me, abuse me, as no matter where you go, you just continue to attract abusers. I've had teachers, people from organizations outside of school, managers at work, even the so-called friends from school who displayed strong narcissistic traits. I was bullied relentlessly all throughout school. I think at this point we have established that my mom didn't really want to do things for me. When she did do things, it would come with strings attached. I was such an easy target for bullies because of it. I was bullied for not having the right things, not having done things. I remember back in primary school when I tried to be friends with a group of girls, they all made up all these insane random rules to be friends with them. Like you need to wear this, you need to get this overpriced item of clothing. They would sit around and point out everything that is wrong with me. Like they would go around one by one and point out all of my flaws and say how I was not allowed to sit with them until I changed everything about myself. Some of these people literally had it in for me. It's like they hated me before they even got to know me. They were already looking for things to pick on me. They would always quiz me on things, like they would ask me, oh, do you know who this band is, what this movie is, what this actor is? If I said no, they would lose it at me, like, oh, how do you know who that is? But if I did know them, they would ramp up their questioning, call me a fake fan, or accuse me of copying them. I never belonged. I would literally get rejected from friend groups because I was an outsider. I would constantly be excluded, rejected. People would pretend that I did not exist. Say if I was sitting in a group of people and they were talking about something, if I said something to add, they would pretend to not hear me. They would constantly talk over me, interrupt me, to the point I literally stopped speaking to them. What's the point if nobody was going to listen? That's actually one of the reasons why I started doing this in the first place, because when I turn on my camera and start speaking, I know this is one of the only places on earth where I can finish my sentence without being interrupted, without being talked over, without having to worry about if anyone is going to listen, where I can express myself fully. Most of the bullying that I experienced were sort of the subtle bullying. It would happen in secret behind closed doors. Oftentimes, people that were bullying me would only treat me in that way but be nice to everyone else. That way, if I spoke out, I would be gaslit. People would not believe me. They would accuse me of being dramatic, overreactive, sensitive. It was such a surreal feeling, like I knew something others didn't. And I would admit my behavior wasn't always the best. I would lash out, I would go extended periods of time without talking to people. But I don't think I deserved the way I was treated. Especially the way I behaved was a direct result of how I was treated, how I was isolated, excluded out of everything. But there was a double standard. It was okay for them to treat me in this way, but not for me to react. It really did make me upset because I wanted friends. I always knew that I had to distance myself from my family, so I wanted at least a couple friends to fall back on. But at the end of the day, they were still kids. They were still teenagers from high school who do stupid things. So while I haven't forgotten, I have moved on from them. But what really became the last straw was when the teachers and other authority figures who were supposed to be there for me turned their backs too. So I really was struggling. Almost everyone around me at the time knew something was up. But whenever I tried to tell an adult about it, they just wouldn't believe me. Whether it be teachers, counselors at school, therapists, even people outside of school, they would dismiss it, downplay it, not take it seriously. They would get really uncomfortable when I would open up about the things that happened to me when I was younger, when I was in Bangladesh. They basically said because this happened outside of Australia, they couldn't do anything about it. They said they would be there to listen and help as long as I don't talk about my family or the things that happened to me when I was younger. Which made for really awkward conversations like, yeah, we can help you as long as we don't talk about the main thing, the bulk of what has been bothering you. But even then, they seemed hesitant and reluctant. Sometimes when I would go to see them, they wouldn't even look at me as I'm speaking. They would just gaslight me, make excuses for my mom, say how, oh, your mom just doesn't understand, or she is just from a different culture. They dismissed it off as family matters and didn't want to get involved. I've had therapists literally say to me, oh, it's your mom, only you know how to best deal with her. At school, they would try to call her all the time. Like say, for example, I was opening up to a counselor one time about what I was going through, what my mom put me through. She then went, oh, if you're having issues with your mom, why don't you just talk to her? Then she proceeded to call her in front of me, telling her everything that I said to her. And that went exactly how you'd expect. I would get home and my mom would go off at me like, oh, if you have a problem with me, why can't you just tell me? Why do you have to go around to all these strangers? I guess I can't even say anything to you. You're going to go around school telling everyone how I'm such a bad mom. It was especially hard because at the time I didn't understand things like guilt tripping, gaslighting, and other manipulation tactics that my mom was doing. But the so-called counselors, therapists, and all these professionals did not seem to get it either. They all acted like I was the problem, I was the troublemaker that needed to be fixed. And when they realized that I was not, when I would actually open up about some of the things that I've been through, they did not know what to do with me. I had one teacher since year 8 who I had been close with, who insisted that I must always see him if I ever needed anything. During the last year of school, he just stopped talking to me. He would avoid me, walk away when we would run into each other, he'd pretend that I did not exist. That's when I realized that I have to leave. I can't stay here anymore. It wasn't until after I left and started looking into what has happened to me, I began to understand. After I found spaces on the internet, things like Reddit groups such as Raised by a Narcissist, Estranged Adult Child, and other support groups online, I finally started to notice a pattern, realizing the things that happened to me. I finally had a space and a community of people that resonated with me. I learned that estrangement is a thing. It is something that you can do where you just go no contact. I have always thought about doing something like that, but I never had the words to describe it. And here's the other thing as well. A lot of people commented under my estranged parents video on how I'm using the term narcissist loosely, how it is a medical condition that I shouldn't be throwing around so carelessly. And while yeah, I agree that I'm not a professional, I can't tell you for sure whether my mom is a narcissist because she has never been diagnosed, she never saw a professional for it. But there's still a value in having those labels, having the words to describe, to explain what I was going through. All this time, my situation felt so much worse than it already was because I did not have the words to explain it. I was left wondering and confused as to why do I struggle so much? Why can't I stick to things? Why am I always so behind in life compared to everyone else? To make matters worse, people constantly invalidated me, told me how, well, everybody feels this way, everybody struggles once in a while. But I knew something wasn't right. I knew it since I was really young actually, but then when I finally found these spaces, I was like, oh, it all clicked and finally made sense. One thing that I noticed in all these support groups and online spaces is that the effects of abuse become really apparent once you reach adulthood. Like when you're a child that is sheltered and protected, a lot of the signs of being abused can get brushed under the carpet. Say if you're constantly lashing out and getting into trouble at school, people just brush you off like, oh, you're just going through a rebellious phase and punish you for it, which leads you to lashing out even more and it turns into a vicious cycle. Or maybe you were the more quiet type who always did their work and tried to stay out of trouble. You get praised for being so well behaved and get told how mature you are for your age. But it's not until you reach adulthood the effects of abuse really start to show. For me, it was because I was so exhausted from keeping up this facade of everything being okay. All the work I did back when I was younger, whether it be in school, my part-time job, extracurriculars, was an escape to mentally run away from all the things that I was going through. And also, being an adult is hard. It's a hard, competitive world out there. Even the most well-adjusted people who grew up with loving parents and had a good start in life can struggle with going to uni, going to work, paying bills, making ends meet, and the things that you have to do as an adult. And so you can only go so far with pretending that everything is fine, running away. At some point, it will catch up to you. Especially when you're in that kind of environment where you're surrounded by people who are well adjusted or at least are better off than you, it becomes so obvious. That's another reason why I struggled so much in uni. Firstly, I had trauma from school, from being hit and abused over grades to the point I can't even sit in a classroom anymore without debilitating anxiety. But also, I felt like an absolute alien with my other classmates. I don't relate to anyone, I can't connect with anyone, I have nothing to share about myself that is not related to trauma or abuse in some way. And that becomes hard in a world where networking is important, right? It's not just about making friends. Even if you're the best at your job, if you don't know the right people, you can't go anywhere in life. Over time, it builds up resentment. I tried doing a bachelor's degree after high school, but then dropped out after a year. After that, I tried doing TAFE, I tried doing a diploma, but it was still really difficult. For me, the issue was that I still had to live at home as I was doing that. Australia is not like the United States where you can go off to college and live in a dorm away from family. Most people that go to uni here still live with their parents. And I just could not stand to do that anymore, especially now that I don't have to. I'm an adult. My mom insisted that I don't take out any loans. Instead, she wanted to pay for my unis just so she could have something to use against me. One of the years that I did the bachelor's course, it costed $10,000. And to this day, my mom holds it over my head. Every time we get into a fight, she goes over this whole monologue about all the things she had done for me to guilt trip me. How she birthed me, raised me, fed me, put a roof over my head, bought me a laptop, spent $10,000 on a degree only for me to drop out after a year. I just could not take it anymore. I knew that the longer I stayed at home, the more I would have to rely on her. And because everything she does for me comes with strings attached, she'll have more things to use against me. And I just couldn't. I remember I would go to uni and be stressed out as I would think of all the money that I'm spending on courses and how my mom would hold it over my head till the end of time. Thanks to all the online spaces and the communities that I found, I now know that what she was doing was wrong. That when you have a child, it's literally your job as a parent to feed them, clothe them, provide education, meet their basic needs, keep them alive. Guilt tripping you for it is absolutely cruel especially because you were a child. It's not like you could have taken care of yourself. What became the last straw was this one thing she said that finally dropped the mask for me, that made me realize who she really was. So this was last year when I was still doing my diploma. I was living at home, but I had money saved up, so I was paying for everything myself. As I was learning more and more about narcissism and other types of abuse, I was getting really resentful of her. Especially now that in uni, a lot of the things that I was struggling with were a direct result of the way she raised me. But because I was still living with her, I didn't want to cause trouble. I just grey rocked her. After I would get home from uni, I would do my chores around the house and just lock myself up in my bedroom. My mom did not like that, which was so weird because all my life, all I've heard her do was complain about me, complain about raising me, doing things for me. Now that I just wanted to be left alone, there was still this weird tension in the house that was hard for me to explain. Things finally came to a head on the night of April 9th, 2024. And yes, I remember the exact date because what she said to me I thought was so fucked up that from there on I decided to write down, keep a record of everything she did from then on. So she burst into my room without knocking or anything and started going off about why I locked the door. She went off on the same old monologue on how she raised me, how she did everything for me, how she fed me, clothed me, raised me, protected me, all that. But this time I knew better. So I said to her, well, you were supposed to do that. That's literally your job as a parent. When you have a kid, you're legally obliged to meet their basic needs and keep them alive. She did not like that answer, and after a couple back and forth, I straight up asked her, so what's the alternative? Would you rather have us be dead? And she looked at me blankly for a moment and said, yeah, I would rather have you dead. I never wanted you. Nobody wanted you. When I first brought you home, you were so ugly nobody even wanted to hold you. I did, and so you should be grateful for that. I was so shaken up, I don't even remember what she said after. I think even she was shocked herself that she said that. But it didn't just end that night. The next morning she got ready to go somewhere. I asked her where she was going. She didn't answer. I thought she probably didn't hear me, so I asked again where she was going. Then my brother entered the room and asked her where she was going, and then she answered that she was going to the court. To the court? For what? She didn't answer, she just walked off. My brother and I were freaking out, like, what is she planning to do? Is she planning to kick us out? Both my brother and I were legal adults at that point, so she can't do that. She did not return until noon, and when she got home, she did not say anything. She just plopped herself on her bed and laid there till evening. Now, I don't know what happened at the court that she went to because I did not go with her. But if I were to guess, I would say that whoever she spoke to ended up agreeing with me than her. She lived in a bubble where she could never be wrong, especially the argument that she uses so frequently. Having that be debunked crushed her ego. She was not the same after that night. But eventually she did get up. The only thing she said to me was, I don't want to talk to you anymore. Now, this wasn't the first time she gave me the silent treatment. But in the past, it would last 3 days at most, and then she would start talking to me like nothing happened. But this time it was different. This time she really stuck to it. She wouldn't speak to me even if it was necessary. She would speak to me through my brother. Like, say for example, if she needed to tell me something, instead of saying it to me directly, she would look at my brother and go, tell Nodi this and that. She would do it right in front of me, even when I'm in the same room as her, and it would have been easier for her to just say it to me directly. She wouldn't even acknowledge me. She would use my brother as like the middleman. While she did remain quiet, her passive-aggressive behavior dialed up to an 11. She would slam doors, bang on things. One time she opened the bathroom door while I was using it. Because we can't lock doors, she stuffed the latch hole so the doors wouldn't lock. So even when you're using the bathroom, the door would be unlocked. She opened it, saw me sitting on the toilet seat naked from the waist down as it would be when you're using the toilet. Instead of saying sorry or excuse me, she just slammed the door at my face and walked off. Another time when I was cleaning, because I did the majority of the cleaning in my apartment, I needed to vacuum. And she was sitting on a chair in the corner where we kept the vacuum. And I said to her, hey, I need to use the vacuum, hoping she would move out the way. But she did not. She just sat there, motionless with a contempt look on her face, pretending to not hear me. In the end, I had to work around her. I basically squeezed myself in that corner, picked up and lifted up the vacuum over her head to get it. But the worst thing she did was one time when she had to go out somewhere and my brother was in the bathroom, so she couldn't relay her message onto him. I was there, I was in my room, but I was closer to her. But she was still so insistent on not talking to me that she just walked out. Didn't tell me where she was going. I got out of my room and saw the front door was wide open. Anyone could have gotten in. The thing about me is that I mentally check out way before I physically check out. And with my mom, I had been teetering on checking out, like, oh yeah, she has put me through years of abuse and stunted me developmentally, causing me to be behind my peers at everything, but she has also been through a lot, and I just have one parent, so I wanted to work things out with her. But that night, after she straight up said that she didn't even want me, that she would rather have me dead, I completely clocked out. I don't think there is any coming back from that one. I couldn't even look at her the same anymore. But the way she behaved after that made things even worse, and the people around me still acted like nothing happened and were trying to move past it. Like my brother, for example, was literally in the same room when she said that. And he stared at me in disbelief, like he too could not believe that she had just said that. Yet he still tried to excuse it. Tried to tell me how I should just move on. And if I spoke out, I am the one who gets in trouble and gets labeled as being violent and aggressive. I wish I could say I shortly moved out after and went no contact, but I was still in uni at the time. I was getting my diploma. I wasn't working at the time, so I had no income. My plan was to finish my course and then find a job and move out, and I still had a bit over a year to go. She did not speak to me the entire year. The entire year she continued to be passive aggressive. As for me, I could not finish the course. There was a time in my life when I was younger where I could just focus on studies and not let anything around me to get to me, but I couldn't anymore. I was too burnt out, too exhausted, too spent. After I failed one of the assignments and got told that I had to retake that class, that became my last straw. I just couldn't take it anymore. I wanted to leave, so I started looking for a job, any job. I did not care. And thankfully I did find one. I found a full-time job that I started in January of this year. And then literally a month later, in February, I found an apartment that was 20 minutes away from my work. And so I was ready to move out. This all happened so quickly, and honestly I was terrified, but I was trying not to show it. And that brings me to my other reason as to why I checked out. My family's behavior towards me only changed after I announced that I was moving out. My brother, who is 3 years younger than me, did a complete 180 after I told him that I was moving out. He was the golden child of the family, my mom's favorite. All my life I got told how I should be more like him, how he is so much better than me. And so my brother never understood or took my side when my mom would abuse me. He would hide in his room because he just did not want to get involved, and afterwards he would tell me to just get over it and make excuses for my mom. After I told him that I was moving out, he looked terrified. But he still did not want to admit what was really going on, so he tried to play it cool. But I can sense that he did not want me to go. He started checking in on me a lot more, asking questions about my new place, playing cute. He acted like a child. He spoke in a high-pitched voice. It was so unsettling because he is bigger than me. He was 19 at the time, but he looked a lot older. He was big, hairy, smelly. It was so awkward to have a grown-looking man pretend to be a child, but that's all he knew. When he was younger, he was praised a lot by my mom when he behaved in this way, when he acted all cute and innocent, because that way he was easier to control and manipulate, and so he just reverted back to that. And there is nothing inherently wrong with that, but the fact that he only started being attentive after I told him that I was moving out felt so icky. And by that point, too much time had passed. You know, all this time, all these years, he pretended that he did not care, he didn't want to get involved. Now he wanted to catch up years within a matter of a month, and it was just awkward. My mom was even worse. She didn't start talking to me until literally on the day that I moved out. She still tried to pretend that nothing happened, but by that point we both knew that we have gone too far for that. This is a point of no return. The things that she used to do to me back then when I was younger was not going to work anymore. On the day she tried to be caring and affectionate, she told me, "Oh, if you ever need anything, just let us know," but she couldn't even look me in the eye as she said that. The movers came to take my stuff. She sat on the stair steps as they did, watching me like she used to when I was younger. Let me remind you, all year she did not speak to me. She gave me the longest silent treatment that I've ever gotten. And now, just as I was moving out, she didn't let me go out of sight. I know why she did it, but this hot and cold still felt so jarring. Literally on the day that I moved out, I blocked them both, and I have been in no contact with them since. That was about 8 months ago as of writing this. Some of you may hear this and think, "Oh well, they're gone now, they're out of your life, everything should be good now, right?" And while things are a lot better, like for the first time in my life, I feel relaxed, I truly feel calm and peaceful. I am able to really live and think about the future instead of living day to day. But it has also been so fucking hard. Firstly, it's wild having to start your life in your 20s. Again, some of you may hear this and think, "Oh well, you're still young, you still have time to figure things out." Yes, but you still have to live with the fact that you're going to be perpetually behind your peers in every aspect for the rest of your life. Most people just don't even comprehend the damage long-term abuse can do to you, especially as a child. In my experience, most people have a very elementary understanding of what abuse is truly like. You know, you tell people that you've been abused by your mom, and 9 times out of 10 they think it's just some small thing like, "Oh, my mom yelled at me," or "she was mad at me." Not, "Oh, if I don't do this, my mom may hit me. She will call me names. She will shame and crush my self-esteem. She will hold it over my head for the rest of my life. She may not speak to me for an entire year." This kind of systemic abuse ruins you from inside and out. And the worst part is that nobody takes it seriously. Even if they can admit what was happening was wrong, they don't want to get involved. They only got involved when they sensed that I was going to leave them, and if that's the only time they care about you, then they shouldn't be in your life in the first place. So many people back then, whether it be in school, work, organizations outside of school, barely knew that I existed back then. They judged me, criticized me, acted like I was the problem. Only after I left them, that's when they started caring. To me, that is so manipulative. It made me not want to speak to them anymore. Another thing that comes with escaping an abusive home is that everything that you've been bottling in all these years, in my case it has been over a decade, it all comes out at once. Like, it wasn't just my home, even at school I dealt with bullying, where they get to criticize me, they invite me out just to be incredibly rude and judgmental, they trash on my interests, tell me how I'm just copying them, or just deliberately exclude me and pretend that I don't exist. But if I react in any way, I am the one who gets in trouble. I am the one who gets gaslit and get told that I'm too sensitive, and why didn't I tell them how it's wrong to do the things that they were doing? But that's pointless, because they know what they were doing. It's just that they didn't think that I would go anywhere. That's why they thought that they could get away with treating me however they wished. That's why to this day they will deny that they ever did anything. Not because they don't understand how it's wrong to do what they did, but because they think they have the right to do what they have done. That's why addressing these people is futile. You don't try to argue with someone who think they're fundamentally above you and you're deserving of being treated poorly. You just go no contact with them. But even that can build up resentment and anger. And once you've left them, once it is safe for you to express yourself, it all comes out at once. You deal with plenty of health issues, aches and pains, sleep problems, but above all, what comes is exhaustion. And when I say exhaustion, I'm not talking about, "Oh, I'm just a little tired here and there." No, I'm talking exhaustion that you feel it in your bones. The kind where you're just making it day to day with no energy left to spend on hobbies, relationships, anything meaningful in life. I mean, I wasn't even allowed to be sick. Even when I was sick, my mom would never take care of me. She would instead scold me. The way she would behave when I would get sick is that she would go over everything I had done that might have caused me to get sick, finding a reason, an excuse to go off at me, blame me for being sick, whether it be eating ice cream, going out without a jacket, leaving window open, whatever. And then for the next week or so, she would go off about how stupid I am, how she told me so, how I never listened to her, how it's my own fault for being sick. She will hide medicine, like say if I wanted to take a Panadol or antihistamine or whatever, she would not let me. Instead, she will hide them to punish me, to teach me a lesson for not listening to her. Strangely, she never acted like this with my brother. With my brother, she was able to take care of him, give him medicine, so show sympathy. To this day, she will deny this. When pointed out, she would throw a tantrum, give silent treatment, or even cry. As for me, I started hiding myself when I would be around her. I did what I now know to be grey rocking. I kept things fake, shared as little as possible about myself. I would lie, I would sneak out. Oftentimes, I would get in trouble for doing so as well. When I would get sick, I would hide it. I would try my best not to sneeze, cough, or blow my nose around her. I would keep my own stash of medicine in my room that I bought myself, and I would take them in secret. And that is what eventually caused her to explode and get the mask to fall off. Not me getting into trouble, not me lashing out, not me behaving the way she does, but me simply wanting space and creating boundaries, staying silent, not sharing too much. Funny how that works. I once had dreams. I once had hopes for the future. But those were robbed off of me. I was left in such a situation where I didn't care about what I did or what I wanted to achieve in life. I just wanted out. When most of the kids around me were dreaming of being an astronaut or an artist or whatever, my biggest dream growing up was to leave my family, to have a place of my own away from them, and I got that. But the thing about achieving your biggest dream that no one tells you about is that you don't know what to do next. All my life I worked towards this goal. I did well in school because I thought it will finally get my mom to leave me alone. I learned to cook, clean, and look after myself because I would have to once I start living on my own. I got a part-time job so I can save up for my new place. All the hobbies that I did have back then were an escape. And now that I have finally escaped, I can't really enjoy them as much anymore. They just don't hit the same. There's this feeling of, now what? I have already achieved my goal, the biggest dream that I worked all my life for. And what do I do now? I literally have no drive, no passion, no motivation to do anything else. I wish I could just not do anything for a good couple years to make up for all the years that I've lost, but I can't do that. I have to work full time to be able to afford this place. I don't give a shit about my work. I am too exhausted to even focus. I only work for a check, and honestly that shows. Like, I make so many mistakes at my work, it's terrible, but I can't afford to quit, and honestly I don't know what else to do. I can't even think about uni anymore. Having to do school on top of a part-time job and everything else for myself, whether it be cooking, cleaning, household chores, was enough for me. But I had no choice. Either do everything by myself or depend on my mom and have her guilt trip me or use it against me or do it incorrectly. I have already known this, but this became especially apparent during my last year of high school. All the people who did well, who went on to achieving big things, got degrees in medicine, law, whatever it may be, all came from supportive families. They all had parents to support, fall back on, which makes sense. If you're going to uni, studying something at the highest level, chances are you have a safety net. You don't have to worry about what to eat, how to buy your books, having your space cleaned, all the mundane chores that you don't even think about, which helps you focus and work towards whatever it is that you're studying. But most of them don't even realize it. They take it for granted and think everybody is like them. And if you're struggling, there must be something wrong with you. Obviously, there are some exceptions, but going to uni, getting a degree is hard for most people, and to do it without a support system is virtually impossible. Maybe in the future, once I have sorted myself out, built a safety net for myself, but for now, I would just have to keep doing what I'm doing. And despite how exhausting it has been, honestly, I'm doing so much better. I can use the bathroom now whenever I need. I don't have to fear getting yelled at if I make a loud noise. I don't have to walk on eggshells. I can afford and get myself whatever I want. I can buy my own clothes, food, medicine without having to beg, without being lectured on how I should be grateful, without feeling guilty. I am doing better financially now than I ever did whilst I was living with my family. And that is wild when you really think about it, because for most people, it's the opposite. For most people, when they first move out and start living on their own, they get overwhelmed with how expensive everything is and how they now have to do everything on their own. But for me, I feel so relieved now, and I can only hope that with time, it will get better. If you made it this far, honestly, thank you so much for watching. I don't know how long this video will get at this stage, but if you sat through this whole thing, I really, really appreciate it. Other than that, I think I'll leave it at that for now. I could go on really, despite how long this video is. There is so much that I've still left out, but yeah, I probably wouldn't make any more videos this year. I don't know anymore.